He makes $2 million dollars in one day. Today, you're going to find out Crypto Kaleo's journey, how he went from losing 100 BTC to now making 2 million a day. It's an absolutely incredible journey that I hope you enjoy. If you want more content like this, if you want to learn how to trade the markets, check out our free newsletter. There'll be a link in the description below. And without further ado, let's get into this. Meditators, welcome to another episode of the Market Meditations podcast. Here for his first time ever on a podcast is Kaleo from Twitter, a sensation right now who's been absolutely exploding, posting the biggest gains, the best calls. Kaleo, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate you having me on. I'm excited to dive in.
Well, what made you say yes this time? Or that you've never been on one before. What now made you decide to come on a podcast?
Man, I've got several friends that I've been talking to for a while that I'm going to have to hop on with very soon after this as well. That it's been something that I've wanted to do for a while, but at the same time, just had a little bit of apprehension. I think there is a little part of you that it's easy to refine what you say whenever you have the opportunity to type it out. Yeah, no, so that's what did it, man. So I appreciate it, and I respect you. I've got several good friends that popped on with you, so figured that this was a great place to start off.
Well, let's make it a fantastic episode, starting on a bit of a high note with congratulations to you for posting your first ever seven-figure P&L day not too long ago, though recently you've been posting 2 mil days. Where did you start? How did you end up getting here to which every other day I see a 7-figure profit posted from you?
I don't know, man. It kind of blows my mind too, but at the same time, I am probably more numb to it than I should be. It's I've been trading daily, hours and hours every single day since 2017, whenever I first plugged into crypto. And I guess leverage trading, I first started with BitMEX in 2018. And I thought I was a genius. I slid the lever all the way to 100x, doubled my Bitcoin in a couple hours. And the next thing, I lost it. So long story short, there were ups and downs throughout those years. 2019, I rode a really big high where, I made close to 100 BTC and ended up losing it as well. But back then, 100 BTC was nowhere near the value of what it is right now. It was just one of those things where I could hit certain levels very easily. And I was always on the cusp of knowing what I needed to do. But it was that experience of failing and the repetition and being able to go through that I think led me to where I am today, to being able to more sustainably uphold that. And, incredibly bullish market doesn't hurt either.
The incredibly bullish market certainly helps, but did you lose that entire 100 BTC that you had accumulated? Has something changed which was different back then? Whoa, wow.
No, I lost everything with it back then. I had several points where I thought I had made it, and I actually had a long position open on BitMEX at that time with Bitcoin that had I held it open, it would have accumulated close to 1,000 Bitcoin, but I wanted to push the limits and basically got myself chopped in a trade where I closed the long and I tried to swing trade short rather than riding the momentum of that long, which was my initial plan. And in that chop, I got in my head and basically chopped myself to zero. So it was a matter of at that point in time, I had a well-paying job, and I was like, okay, I can fund this, do it again, whatever. And later on, it wasn't the exact same. And I want to be completely transparent with that right from the beginning, just with the fact that people see these gains and they see the opportunity that's out there, and they think that it's something that's handed to them on a silver platter when they start, and it's not. It takes time and it takes failure to be able to succeed. And at least with the way that my style, and I would not recommend my style to anybody because, when I started off, and now, I've learned to manage it. I don't use near the leverage or anything else that I used to use. I'm a lot more conservative with it. Know when to cut, know when to add, etc. But it is, it's not an easy game, man.
I really appreciate, and I know the listeners will too, that transparency, because it'd be so easy for you to come on here and talk about how well you're doing right now and how much money you're making right now and how great everything is. But to start right off the bat with 100 BTC loss and how difficult the journey was back then, I really respect that. And I'm sure, I'm wondering, why was it not working back then? What was different?
And it goes back to 2017, even earlier, right? 2017, I was brand new, like the new wave of people coming in now, right? I bought in February of that year and I was doing really well, just hodling. Then my friend told me about crypto Twitter and I kind of lurked in the background, followed calls of random guys. Heck, I even listened to Crypto Bully and his TA back then. I went all in on Doge, DocuSign, all that type of stuff. I bought into the hype of all the fundamentals of everything that was being shilled to me. And slowly, I watched my dollar value go up, but I watched my Bitcoin value erode throughout the year. So that's where I found myself, in 2018 with the BitMEX thing, where I started off and I was like, well, I guess leverage, I can make it back with that. Because I felt the FOMO of what I'd missed out. And I was like, man, had I known about leverage this whole time, I would have been fine. I would have been killing it. There's no way I would be in the position I'm in now. So I dove in head first. And, I've always been prone to have an appetite to be able to take risk. And I did it. And next thing you know, like I said, I lost it. So then each paycheck that I got, everything that I could put toward it, I would put toward it. And I would do it basically twice a month. I would just dive in and I would do it over and over again. And, occasionally I'd have a couple months streak where I'd do well and then lose it. And then, repeat the process. And eventually 2019, I worked with a company where, like I said, I was making good money and I could have stayed with them, but they were doing redundancies. I chose to take a severance package where I got a year and a half's worth of salary, was able to pay everything off, and then just rode that high right as that wave in 2019 started. So I was able to multiply my money, felt like, everything was on easy mode at that point. Up until, like I said, I kind of went full tilt and, it's all a mental game at that point. So
What made you go full tilt? What you said, like something shifts, but what specifically makes you go full tilt? What takes it from that win to the lose?
so in that scenario, it was, I got overconfident and I assumed that it would be easy to nail it. I was like, okay, every single level that I want to hit has hit the way I've wanted to hit it. So as Bitcoin went up with that big spike from 4K to 5K, I was like, okay, well, I've got this long and I know the calculated P&L that it could make if everything plays out the way I want it to, if I just sit on my hands and do nothing. But I wanted more. So that's where I was like, I can double that if I swing short and then re-long using that. And it's just that greed mentality that got to me back then. So next thing you know, I think I was where a lot of the people are right now that are probably listening to this, that, you felt like you were on the sidelines as Bitcoin did what you knew it was going to do for years and what you preached to people for years. And you took the shit from everybody that this wasn't going to be it. You were never going to make it, that you were crazy for doing it in the first place. You finally felt vindicated and it was ripped away. So emotionally, that's tough. It's draining mentally, physically. And you get in this headspace where you don't really want to talk about it. You kind of just tuck away for a little bit. And My thing was, though, I always knew I had the potential. I knew I had what it take. It was just a matter of, could I control my hunger, my greed for what it was, and not just that, but be able to stick to the plan. Not, if I have an off day, be able to walk away from the screen and close out my positions rather than be in something 24/7. So, um, yeah, it eventually, kind of led to further on, I guess, that thread that I shared on Twitter, which, I'll kind of pause here, see if you have any questions about what I brought up so far, because I know I've talked about a lot.
Well, you really have talked about a lot, and my biggest takeaway was that it sounds like you've always been pretty good at the technical side. You've known the right levels, you've known where to enter, you've had a good read on the market, and the only issue I really seem to see is uh, psychology, because I'm sure you understood risk management as well and what it would take to get liquidated, but the greed kicked in and caused you to go in that
Mhm.
direction. So I'm just diving in and trying to find out what shifted, what's changed. Is this time different? Is this just the greed paying off in a bull market, or have you done something different this time?
I think that it started off as the greed paying off in the bull market. And I think I've transitioned to being able to make it where it wasn't. Because basically, long story short, Koroush, what happened with where I was, I don't know exactly what you call the whole philosophy for, you can do it long, slow, and steady, which is, I think, the best way to do it, right? Careful risk management, diving in, slowly accumulate, slowly build your wealth. Or you can be different, and being different has a cost. Being different is finding that edge, and that cost for me was, I think, years of just struggles with that ups and downs, right? With where I was, but understanding long term exactly what it would take to get where I was. And now what I've done, I have shifted that strategy to where, okay, rather than doing it slow and steady at the very beginning, like I said, I was kind of going all in, where I was like, okay, I can do a huge multiple here, ease off on the risk, do another multiple, and then slowly ease off the risk until basically you're playing with spot. And that is more the path that I've approached it with right now, rather than before. I think I got in the mindset where it was full risk, full amount of the time.
Kaleo, I definitely understand where you're coming from with regards to, there are two approaches. There's the build wealth slow approach, and then there's more risky one. And the build wealth slow works more reliably, but there is something to be said about concentrating risk and targeting those more controlled returns while setting an end goal. I think with concentrated risk, you either need to send that end goal of a monetary target, or gradually reduce that risk as time goes on. How are you reducing that risk now that you're much closer to, or maybe at, where you want to be?
Oh, I mean, it's an easy strategy. Basically, at the very beginning, when I first started off, trying to rebuild this wealth, when I was going out there and I was literally knocking on doors, trying to sell windows to people to be able to generate some type of income in the middle of the pandemic, I was taking, and I literally would only get paid $600 per window or per house that sold. It was, and it was a lot of work. It was the middle of summer. It was hot. It was difficult. People didn't want to buy. People didn't want to listen. But I didn't want to give up, and I didn't want to ask for help, because I am very independent. I believe in hard work. I believe in pulling yourself out of a mess that you put yourself in the first place. And I also believe that when your back is put to the wall, it really drives out and brings out the best in you if you let it. Um, so I ended up, taking that money, and I would basically just try to YOLO 100 exit right when it started. So basically look for just a prime entry opportunity and be able to nail it. And then once you hit 100x swing up, a momentum move, take that out, and then basically downplay it to, okay, now I'm doing 20x. And then my 20x basically you would have to nail 1 or 2 20X's in a row. And then from there, you can start to ease it down to 5, 4, 3, 2. So that was kind of my strategy going through this, because I knew I didn't have the capital at that point in time to be able to appreciate the returns of what was happening the way that I wanted to. And, it was the same type of boat as where I was before, but I was more confident in my abilities this time around. I knew where I was, I knew what I could do, and I had several swings in the process. And it was just a matter of, believing and continue to believe throughout the course of that failure that success was achievable. So, yeah.
It's two questions I want to follow up with, because two very interesting points there.
Mm-hmm.
Firstly, how do you identify these prime entries? Was it one specific strategy you were using? Were there multiple? How did you learn that strategy?
Man, I've got no textbook trend identification, technical analysis, teaching, whatever. It is basically all from Google, Twitter, and my personal experience for what works and what doesn't. So identifying high time frame moves, where the type of fractals I look at, I do not believe that a fractal is an end all be all, but I do believe that it is a mirror of what could potentially happen in the market, the same way that any other indicators can potentially do that without trying to stretch it. So I would look for high time frame setups that I believed had the potential for impulse moves. Impulse moves as in breaking out of a long multi-year resistance type range that didn't have the opportunity to necessarily have that major pullback. And basically just try to time that. And I had a surprisingly successful rate at being able to identify and be able to go through that. I always have. So that's why I had the confidence that I could do it and that I would be able to do it again, that it was just one of those matters of actually seeing it through to reality and being able to pivot, like I said before.
It sounds like a very intuitive trading style, where you use a culmination of different pieces of information and your experience behind the charts, plus that emotional pain and euphoria you felt in the trenches yourself to formulate your
Mm-hmm.
trading decisions. But how does someone build that? Do you think it's something someone has or doesn't have, or is it just?
I think it's innate. I think it's innate. You have it or you don't. And a lot of it's situational. I am fortunate in the fact that I am, young. I am not married. I don't have kids. I don't have those responsibilities. I have not invested in, property, et cetera. I have fully invested in myself. And understanding what that would possibly mean in the process of getting to where I wanted to be.
How do I
So
invest in myself? In what is your definition of investing in yourself?
And investing in yourself is believing what nobody else believes is possible. To do something crazy, you have to be a little bit crazy. And you have to be prepared for both sides of success and failure, understanding that failure is part of the process. I think a good analogy would be back whenever I was in college. I went on a ski trip with some buddies, and I'd never been skiing before. Took the lift up to the top of the mountain. I was like, well, should I spend a day on lessons or something like that? Like, do I need it? And they're like, oh no, you don't want to do that. Like, the lessons, like, you won't need it. We'll get up there and we'll show you, right, how it's done, and you'll be fine. So got up to the top of the mountain. Immediately, they all race each other to the bottom. So I'm stuck at the top of the mountain. I've never skied before. Don't know exactly what to do. I didn't even know, how to slow, how to go fast, but I was like, well, I have to get down. So I just started to go. And I didn't know how to stop. So rather than doing a conventional stop or even slow down, my way of slowing down was I would go full speed. And once I was going too fast and I noticed something was coming up, I would literally roll out of it. So I did that until I looked and saw what other people were doing and realized, okay, this is what you do. So in the process, yeah, that first day it was awful, trying to figure that out. But by the second day, I was leaps and bounds above where I would have been had I just done the conventional, go through the class, go on the bunny slopes, do this and that. And, I was doing the black diamonds by like day number 3, which um, I don't think I ever would have even had the confidence, because what the way that my friends set me up for was I wasn't afraid to fall at that point anymore. I was going through it and I was going down full speed, and I could do that and I could go at those fast speeds and I could race my friends that have been doing it for years down the mountain because I wasn't afraid to fall.
Just straight into the deep end
Um,
right off the bat.
and exactly. And that's one of those things, like I said, that I think is a little bit innate, that not everybody necessarily is built that way. And that's fine. Everybody has to be able to understand who they are, what their character is, and to be able to kind of hone in on what your strength is, leverage that, and utilize that. I think that's kind of betting on yourself, is understanding what your strength is, not adapting to somebody else's, but leveraging it.
I'd say there's a style for everyone in this game. So it may not be your style, but everyone's got something innate within them, whether they be a turtle trader gaining 1 to 5% slowly over time and over the years accumulating huge amounts of wealth, or more intuitive short term spikes and then reductions of risk like you've been using. There's a style for everyone. Would you agree with that?
Oh, I completely agree. There is a style for everybody. And I go back to, I think the majority of people, their style should not be, if you notice how active I am with posting charts, part of being a trader is you constantly flip bias, right? You cannot be married because you are trading, you are going in and out, you are moving with the direction of the market, and your bias constantly changes. You have to be able to admit that you are wrong before anybody else does, and especially before the market does. Um, so I think the majority of people, though, the market is going up, right? So buy, hold, be patient, have levels that that you want to start taking money out, and take money out.
Are you taking any money out right now? Because, like I said, I'm seeing $2 million days back to back. Are you taking any profits? Is this just going to continue to go up? What is the plan now, Kaleo?
I am I am de-risking and working on what I can do to take that capital out, and um, it is a process. It's a bit of a process at 9 grand a day.
Wait, 9 grand a
So,
day. It's going to take you a while, buddy.
yeah, so I might have a perpetual income fixed. So we'll see. But yeah, you're working toward plans with that.
Yeah.
So
Any interesting plans?
no, they're more just vague ideas that I need to dive into and see and go from there. But for now, I'm content with what I have and what I'm doing, and trying to. It sounds terrible, but my goal with this isn't necessarily the money. My selfish goal is, part of just proving that I see myself as one of the best. So being one of the best and being reflected on a leaderboard or something else with that, just to say that I can. I can trade with anybody, any institution, anything else without the same background. It's possible.
That hunger and drive is amazing, and I love that you've also translated that and taken it into your huge generous donations to the FTX Foundation. Is that part of what motivates that as well?
Yeah, no, I think giving back is 100% vital, and it should be something that everybody does, and it should be everybody's drives. What we have here is fleeting. It's not going to be something that lasts forever. And that is part of the knowledge and the security that I have, I guess, in being able to lose whatever and not lose my mind, is that the money doesn't define me. The success doesn't define me. So being able to once again leverage that, I think, is important.
It's almost like a tool to create what seems to be a psychological iron fortress you've managed to build over these last 4 years, and essential to an intuitive style of training. Now, intuitively, if you could go back to the start, 2017, where this all began, what would you tell yourself? One piece of advice you would tell yourself, which you think would accelerate the time it takes for you to get exactly where you are here today.
I don't know. I might say just never trade. To be honest, I think I would tell myself never to do it. I love it now, and I am appreciative for where I am and what it's become. Um, but there was a period where it just wasn't worth it. It would have been worth it to just sit, buy, hold, be patient. So, if I look at all my spot purchases from back in the day for BTC and what their cumulative value would be now, I've only recently surpassed what my max BTC would have been.
I was not expecting that answer.
Yes. But I mean, cost average entry was low, right? Starting at $1,000 and working my way up.
What was the bit that wasn't worth it? Was there a specific dark period that really hurt? Was it just the whole time invested into trading when you could have just held? What made it so not worth it?
Well, no, don't get me wrong. It's 100% worth it. I am very grateful for where I am, and I'm very passionate about it. I wouldn't want to be doing anything else, right? The process, though, was extremely difficult. Going through the ups and the downs, being able to get there, there was part of me that it's like, had I known back then, the easier way would have been just not to do it. Or honestly, the easier way would have been to, like I said, just do it slowly. And I think that slow accumulation of wealth also would have led to other opportunities as well that, who knows, maybe I may missed out on along the way, because of that style. So it's opened up new doors, but other doors were probably closed in the process.
I love the balanced view you have to most of what's being asked. It's very pensive. You thought all this through and put a lot of deliberate effort into these decisions that you've made. Now, it's interesting how when it comes to the future and where this is all going, there's a lot of reflection on the past, but not a lot of clear direction as to where you're trying to go to next. With that in mind, you've had days where you've now lost 1.3 million, which obviously you've made a lot more. But does that still have an emotional impact and a emotional pain or burden or difficulty?
I guess it took me years, but I learned to become numb. And I think that's part of it also with trading large sums is you can't become emotionally invested, because if you are, that's what happened to me in the earlier years. And I think those emotions were part of what drove the poor decisions. I would let those emotions affect me and, revenge trade to try to get it back. Right. Whereas being able to look at it, eclectically, taking a step back and saying, okay, like restarting where I am now, this is what I have. This is what I can do with what I have rather than what I had.
That makes a lot of sense. And to circle back to trading and the current market, do you focus mainly on Bitcoin? I see you posting a lot of exchange tokens. I know you've got a heavy FTT position. You've been trading TRX a lot recently. Do you have a preference, Bitcoin or altcoins, or what's your strategy there?
And once again, as far as trading is concerned, I am agnostic to fundamentals, um, which once again is not necessarily the I think, best approach for many people, because fundamentals are going to be what drives home that long term return, that safety net. And the only real, there are only a few that I would say fundamentally to invest and hold: Bitcoin, Ethereum. Um, I could go down mainly those two. Like,
I felt there
if
was
I
one
were
more
being
coming,
100%
but you held back.
transparent, I'd have to think about it. I don't know yet. We'll see if it pops up. But I mean, outside of that, I think a lot is very speculative and frothy, and there are opportunities where maybe investing a smaller percentage of your portfolio and diversifying across several is the way to go for that. But the majority of your portfolio for your buy and hold should be Bitcoin and Ethereum, in my opinion.
So, do you have long-term strategies as well? Are you diversifying your wealth away from trading into long-term portfolio management? Is that something you're actively doing?
Yeah, so I mean that taking money off, being able to just basically build up cold storage with Bitcoin, Ethereum, and I've got a. I'd say the only other one actually. Here's what I was going to say. The only other one that I have a good amount of is FTT as far as spot. Those are my three largest spot holdings.
Are
So
you planning on holding the FTT? That's more of a long-term play.
I see it as more of a long-term play. I look at the exchange, the direction of it, and it is the first exchange that I feel very confident in as far as their direction of sustainability. And I think investing in that sustainability is important. And I think that they will continue to find utility for that. When you look at the utility of what Binance did with BSC, for instance, recently, that wasn't something that people necessarily saw coming, right?
No.
And I wouldn't be surprised, even with Sol and Serum, et cetera, out there, if FTT does continue to grow those use cases and utilizations outside of basically just staking and buy and burn rewards in the future. So
I'm very interested in seeing how Sam ends up developing that one. But I'm also similarly, for slightly different reasons, bullish on FTT just and the platform exchange itself. And they just bought a stadium.
and what are they?
Sorry.
I said, and what are they? I'm curious to what your thoughts on that one
Well,
are.
I'd agree with you that the platform is pretty amazing, but given the amount I think the team is investing into like building up Solana and Serum is primarily a project by that team, one of their most ambitious ones. I mean, I think I read a report on it, the most ambitious project in the world, given the size of market they're trying to go for. So I don't I would predict that they're not going to try add those use cases to compete with those into FTT, but I could be completely wrong. So yeah, I guess those would be my reasons, which would be slightly different. I don't think it's going to have further utility, but I do believe FTX is going to continue to grow, and it may have different non-competing utilities that could absolutely make it grow in value.
Oh, 100% agree.
Then where I'd go to next would be outside of crypto. So we know you like BTC and Ethereum primarily. You've built yourself a FTT position. Where are you going to outside of crypto now? Are you even diversifying at all away from this space?
Oh, 110% yes. I don't know if you've kept up with me prior, but I am very active with stock market and options as well.
Okay.
So I have been for a couple of years with that also. So, and once again, as of recently, shifted my strategy to more of as far as the calls that I would enter are concerned, just buying leaps and then waiting and diversifying different sectors, et cetera, rather than going for the lottery with the weeklies and then working my way to the leaps. It's like, okay, I've already won the lottery. So I now can afford to buy the leaps and be able to sit and be patient, because once again, same thing with those, where you can be directionally right and correct, but miss out completely by poor risk management if you're not careful. So yeah, I am invested in the stock market, et cetera. And I think the next step for me, past just investing in general, is working a way to find where I don't have to invest anymore. Right. So building a business in the space and doing something that makes a lasting impact, that shapes something in the industry. I don't know what it is yet, but I'm determined, and I know that I will. And it's the same thing with the trading, with where I knew I could, and I know I will. It is the same thing with that, where I don't know what it is yet, but I will do something, and it will impact the industry.
I'm looking forward to seeing that when it does happen, because with this drive and this work ethic, I have no doubt you will succeed on that journey. And it's interesting to see you going outside of crypto and aggressively trading stocks as well. You mentioned winning the lottery there. I noticed the wording. Was there one best trade you made that just changed the entire course of everything?
You know, it's weird to say that I can't remember exactly what it was that kickstarted it. There were so many times over the years that different things kickstarted that turned around, and that finally now where I am and what's been done. Um, it is by far the most sustainable stretch that I've had over a long period of time, to where it's accumulated and accumulated, only recently blown up. It was more of the slow, steady growth that I was talking about. And I think just the conditions of the market have been able to, favorably hike that curve, the slope of it significantly.
How heated do you think the market is right now? How much longer do we have left of these current conditions? Do you look for that in the technicals, or do you just play day by day?
I think we're honestly just getting started. Um, I know that may sound insane. I think there's going to be cyclical rotation within the market. So there are certain sectors like DeFi that I think are a little bit exhausted at this point, that in NFTs as well, that will need that cool off space that later on will pick up. And, I think that's what we've seen in the dino coins, as people have called them recently, where they've been swinging back up. And, some of that's the Coinbase news coming. There are other reasons for it, where they've just been stuck in this long-term accumulation range. But soon enough, those dino plays, probably if you're comparing them to equities, are probably closer to your consumer staples, like your, airlines, oil, et cetera, with that, where you may get a short squeeze for a period of time, but it will be fast, it will be violent, and it will end just as violently, but actually not just as violently. It will end in a slower bleed.
Do you have any particular dino coins you're watching?
I mean, everything that I mentioned on my feed.
Yeah.
So I don't even want to throw anything on the podcast, because I don't even want to say
No,
what
good.
it is, because it could change the next day. So, but just everything that's on my feed is what I'm watching.
Then I think anyone who wants to find out more should absolutely follow you on Twitter, which there'll be a link to in the description to this episode. The last thing I wanted to bring up, because I think it's a really important topic in these market conditions, is how are you balancing your life? How are you staying healthy right now, and not sacrificing all resemblance of sleep or health or social life?
So a couple things, and some of it goes back to the innate nature, but it's not necessarily the innate nature with this one. It's more so the structure of what I've set myself up for, where this is full time for me, first and foremost. There's no other way that I'd be able to manage things and be able to go through the way that I do. And understanding that the work that you put in a bull market, 1 year of just sleepless nights and being able to grind through, do what you can to do what you have to do, of work put in there, I think is worth 5 years in a bear market for the potential that's there. So really just leveraging, once again, the time and the sensitivity to that, knowing that, okay, I can be tired right now and that's okay. Some of the greatest people that have shaped the world have been tired. They have gone through periods where they put in, 3 to 4 hour nights of sleep day in, day out, to be able to get where they wanted. And I think that's what it does take at a certain point, is being able to understand that cost, and there is an opportunity cost outside of that, as far as relationships, et cetera. And still being able to try to focus on that, but understanding at the same time that, to be able to fully leverage what you're trying to do with this, that you need to be able to put in the time and make some of those sacrifices for that period, to be able to have the rest of the time past that what you want it to be. It's like a university student that's spending hours day in, day out studying to be able to get that degree, where they don't have time for the friendships, for the going out, etc. This is my degree. Um, so, yeah, right now, understanding that being tired is okay. Um, Getting sleep where I can, doing what I can to rest and recover, but, you know, taking advantage of the opportunities that are out there.
You certainly seem to be driven by a love of the game, accomplishing things, building things, and that seems to have, at least at this point in your life, a higher priority when it comes to things like, not being tired or getting a little bit more sleep, spending a bit more time with relationships and loved ones. And I really respect that. I think that sort of ambition is and sacrifice is required to achieve the levels of greatness which you are setting yourself out for. And I'm looking forward to seeing the rest of your journey, Kaleo. Is there anything you'd like to leave our listeners with before we close off this episode?
Let me think. The biggest thing, again, is at the end of the day, I want to talk to the people that are going through that struggle, the period that I went through, and the people that are doing well. If you're doing well, de-risk, take some off the table, have some of that foresight to be able to understand that this won't last forever. Though I do think it will last till the end of the year. You just never know. And for the people that are struggling, it's, you can make it out of any situation that you find yourself in if you are willing to put in the work and if you are willing to believe in yourself. There is nothing whatsoever out there that is beyond your ability to work your way out of it. And talk to people. That was the other biggest thing that I didn't bring up earlier. The most difficult thing for me when I found myself in this mess was having those conversations with friends and with family and letting them know I am not what I have built this image of myself to be, with the successful, 6-figure salary job. And I enjoyed athletics, etc. That is not, who I am at this moment, right? Like, I have put myself in this situation, and understanding that your friends and your family will love you on the other side of it, right? But the easiest way to take that weight and that burden off your shoulders is being transparent. And you never know who you're going to help in the process by doing that.
I think you're helping a lot of people, Kaleo, and will do with this episode. I appreciate your transparency and openness for every single question that was thrown your way, some of which is probably difficult to share. Thanks for your time, meditators. That's it for another incredible episode, if I may say so myself, of Market Meditations. That's all from us.